LouieTeeNetwork podcast. We're going to dive knee deep into the free agency tampering period, which has just been off the chain this year. I mean, tampering period is what it is, and nothing is etched in stone to this point, but feels like this has been one of the most aggressive tampering periods in recent memory. And I feel like we say that every year. I don't know if we've ever had it like this with the tampering period, though. The trade deadline has become more aggressive. Trades have become more aggressive. Off-season movement has become more aggressive. I think a lot of this is in the name of everyone feeling like, why not us? We'll get into more of that on today's show, but enough of me yapping. As you can see, we just got one big, gigantic Gem Droppin Session today, as we're just going to talk about the tampering period, what has been done to this point. Everyone's getting involved, the haves, the have-nots. If you broke, you're home. If you got money, you got buku players to sign up. Let's get into it tonight on the 319th installment of the LouieTeeNetwork podcast that starts now. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 319th installment of the LouieTeeNetwork podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Lot going on in the world of sports. March Madness gets underway. As a matter of fact, I watched the first game between SEMO and Texas A&M Corpus Christi. Really good game, actually. It was a good game broke out with probably roughly 7 minutes to go. That was a good start. First, what was the first four, right? So got another game that was on, Pitt and Mississippi State. I'm a big March Madness dude, especially the first two weekends. It's crazy because I care more about, unless my team is in it, I care more about the first weekend and I guess the second weekend, but it's more so the first weekend than anything else. After that, even though I really don't want to see, I don't want to see UMBC, in the Sweet 16 because they're going to get brutalized. There's something about the upset that is so captivating, but it wears off quickly when you realize, now UMBC is playing Kentucky, and this is going to get ugly quick. then all of a sudden, it's not fun anymore, right? So I love March Madness, though. I can't explain it. And it coincides with free agency in the NFL. NBA is coming down the stretch, so you're getting closer to playoff basketball. Things have gotten more intriguing in the NBA now because of the play-in tournament. And so that's starting to heat up. And you're getting close to the start of baseball season. So everything's kind of happening at once. It's a good time to be a sports fan. I can tell you that much. In any event, I am a football guy through and through, as you know, and I love this time of the year, not more so than early September, but a close second. I actually prefer free agency over the draft. Draft is cool, but we don't know what those guys are going to do. A lot of people get excited about the draft for good reason, but free agency is, to me, a better barometer of the improvements that you've made because we know what these players are. You know what you're getting when you get a free agent. Guy's been in the league 3 years, guy's been in the league 5 years, guy's been in the league 7 years. You know what you're getting. The only time you're not quite sure is if you're getting a guy on the back end of his career, not sure how much he's got left in the tank, i.e. the Steelers signing Patrick Peterson. Are you going to get the Patrick Peterson that still showed some life this year with the Minnesota Vikings, made some timely plays? Or are you going to get the Patrick Peterson that finally bottoms out and is absolutely spent? Don't know. But for the most part, you know what you're signing up for. So I'm more inclined to to be excited about free agency because I feel like those guys are going to be able to have more of an impact than a rookie is coming into the league. Now, again, depending on what rookies you select, how much time they get on the field, how quickly they're able to act, how quickly they are able to assimilate into the league. You never know, right? Quarterbacks are the exception to the rule, but I digress. We're going to talk about all of these moves that have been made to this point. Now, I need to throw out this disclaimer, and I've said it already. I'll say it again, just because it needs to be said, even though I don't think you're going to see many players renege or change their minds, but we have seen it happen, at least 2 or 3 times in the last 2 or 3 years. J.D. McKissick changed his mind last year, initially signed a 2-year, $7 million deal with Buffalo, changed his mind, went back to Washington for the same deal. Zadarius Smith initially signed with Baltimore last year or 2 years ago, changed his mind and ended up signing with the Minnesota Vikings. We've seen these things happen. So, the biggest one probably was Anthony Barr about maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Signed with the Jets, this lucrative deal, got cold feet, decided he wanted to go back to Minnesota and made a hard pivot, U-turn, came back to the Vikings instead of signing with the Jets, even though he had already agreed in principle to a deal with the Jets. So none of this that we're talking about tonight, except for trades, those aren't done because the start of the new league year hasn't happened. It won't happen until tomorrow at 4, but those are done for all intents and purposes. Unless someone fails a physical, trades are trades. These deals that haven't yet been signed, those aren't yet etched in stone. So keep that in mind as we discuss tonight. But with that in mind, let's go through each and every single team's list of moves to this point, and we'll really kind of try to stick to the big moves. Some of these teams have made an abundance of moves. I just need to say this, and let's get to the gem dropping session. I mean, that's what we're here for, right? Right. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, LouieTeeNetwork. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So this time of the year sucks when you're broke. It's not that uncommon from real life. I told you, sports is a microcosm of life. There's nothing worse than when the weather gets good outside and everybody's out and about and you just want to get out and you want to be a part of the scene, but you broke. And a wise man once told me, when you're broke, you're home. When you got money, you got buku places to go on. When it's free agency time, when you're broke, you're home. But when you got money, you got buku money to spend on. You out here splurging. You can tell who's broke. You can tell who's rebuilding. You can see just by the lack of movement by some teams. The Patriots, what was it, last year, 2 years ago? They had all this bread. The Patriots were they was out here. They was making it rain, right? What you heard from the Patriots this year? Not much of anything, right? When that money dry up, man, it changes things. Anyway, let's get to what's going on right now. So we start in the AFC East with the Buffalo Bills. This is a team that's ready to try to compete for a Super Bowl. And there isn't much that needs to be done. If you're the Bills, when you're in the position that the Buffalo Bills are in, you're really in the business of trying to retain as many of your guys as possible. Yeah, there's an addition here and an addition there that you'd be looking to make. But for the most part, when you're as close as they are, when you feel like you've got the pieces already in-house to make a run at a Super Bowl, their window is still open. The draft is more your friend than free agency for the reason of I'm trying to hold on to all of my guys. And they've been doing a good job of that recently. Obviously, this year they're going to lose some players. They've already lost Tremaine Edmonds, and this is why you got to try to win when you can, because that window, it starts to shrink. They're probably going to lose Jordan Poyer in free agency as well. The roster's going to start to change a bit. You can't keep everybody. So when you get opportunities, you got to take advantage of it. Connor McGovern comes in on a 3-year, $23 million deal from the Dallas Cowboys. That's a good move there. Really versatile interior offensive lineman, can play center and both guard positions. So he's going to come in. Don't know if he's coming in to start. My guess is he is coming in to start on that offensive line, but he will definitely be a nice piece to add to that mix. Tyler Medikevich, 2-year deal. That's more of a depth and special team signing. Matt Milano, this is important here, signed a 2-year extension through 2026. Remember, he had signed the massive 4-year deal, I think it was 2 off seasons ago, and they needed to probably free up some money. They signed an extension. I think his deal was going to be up here maybe next year after he had signed that deal a couple of off seasons ago. I remember I wanted him bad, and I thought he was going to go. They kept him. It proved to be the right thing. He's all-pro linebacker, and so that's essentially what they did. They also re-signed Sam Martin, their punter, to a 3-year deal as well. Miami Dolphins. You expected them to be somewhat busy here. A lot of noise surrounding the quarterback position with them, obviously, with Tua having the issues with concussions, did not finish the season. They still believe in Tua. They picked up his 5th-year option, so that told everyone that they were pretty much out of the out of the Lamar Jackson sweepstakes. And so they went out. I actually like this move because their backup situation, Teddy Bridgewater was supposed to provide them with some consistency at the backup quarterback position, but in typical Teddy B fashion, he got injured and really didn't offer them any value at backup quarterback, and thus it put them in a tough spot last year where they ended up making the playoffs and had to use their 3rd-string quarterback. It's amazing that they even made it. They signed Mike White to a 2-year deal. I like Mike White, man. I like what he did with the Jets. Talking about guys getting injured, he got injured last year, and that really stunted the growth of the Jets late in the season. Maybe they make the playoffs if he's able to stay healthy, but he didn't. But I think that's a good addition to their quarterback room, because if Tua goes down, you can still win football games with the way Mike White plays the quarterback position. With the talent that they have, he can do some damage for sure. Raheem Mostert is back in Miami. 2-year, $5.6 million deal. So he remains in Miami. Jeff Wilson. So all of those 49ers backs that came over when McDaniel took the job, they're sticking around. They're comfortable in that system. He knows what they're capable of. They know what to expect. And so Jeff Wilson is back on a 2-year, $6 million deal. This is the one. These next two are big moves, I think, that are going to really help this defense. It's already a quality defense in Miami. David Long signs a 2-year, $11 million deal. Man, I love David Long, probably more so than most. I liked him coming out of West Virginia, and I think his ability – now, he's got to stay healthy. That's been something that has plagued him throughout his career, is just, staying on the field. But he plays such a physical brand of football. He's so athletic. I just love the way he attacks the line of scrimmage, and he's an athlete, so you can put him in coverage and he can make some things happen. I think David Long is going to be a really good addition to that Dolphins defense. And then they traded for Jalen Ramsey. This was a big one. We knew he was going to be traded. We talked about this on the podcast about a week and a half ago when the news first, surfaced that the Rams were shopping him. It became a win situation, not an if, but a when and a where. We got the win, which was a couple of days ago. We got the where now, which is Miami. And you know what? Not really that much of a haul. This guy went for 2 first-round picks the first time around. This time, just the 3rd-rounder and tight end Hunter Long out of Boston College, which the Dolphins are loaded at tight end, so they can spare a tight end or two. That is, I think, indicative of where Jalen Ramsey is in his career to this point. I think this speaks to where he is. He's not the guy that he once was. Maybe, just maybe, change of scenery may do him some good. Back in the AFC, maybe he starts to play ball again. I didn't necessarily love how he's being utilized last year, but that was no excuse for him getting cooked down the field consistently. So we'll see if he can't get back in his bag. He's still a young dude. It doesn't have to be over, right? It doesn't have to be nearing the end. Maybe this is the jolt of energy he needs to reinvigorate his status as one of the best corners in football, because he did not look like it last season. So 3rd round pick in Hunter Long in exchange for Jalen Ramsey. He is now a Miami Dolphin. Remember, we heard a lot about Byron Jones, the other corner opposite of Xavier Howard, who we heard was mulling retirement, this, that, and the third. He's now gone, and this gives them a guy opposite of Xavier Howard on the other side. So that's a good move there. Patriots really haven't done much. A lot of these don't need to be even talked about. Raekwon McMillan is re-signing on a 1-year deal, and Jonathan Jones, this is a big one for them, re-signing on a 2-year, $20 million deal with 13 of it guaranteed. There was a chance for him to leave, and if that were to go down, it would have put the Patriots in quite the quandary, because one thing Belichick always has to have is a corner that he trusts. Even though I like what Jack Jones did last year, Jonathan Jones has proven himself in this league. So that's a good move for the Patriots, retaining his services. The Jets, let's talk about the Jets for a second, man. The Jets are really whoring themselves right now. I'm so disappointed in the Jets, man. This is, look, I get it, man. It's Aaron Rodgers. Your owner has already come out and said, we need a veteran. We are a veteran quarterback away. But this shit is gross, what's going on right now. All right. Aaron Rodgers is essentially got these boys by the scrotum. And it's this. Look, I'll just ask this question. Was Allen Lazard on your radar before Aaron Rodgers came into the picture? If Aaron Rodgers doesn't twist your arm and strong arm you into signing Allen Lazard, would you have done it? If Aaron Rodgers wasn't coming to New York, are you signing Allen Lazard to a 4-year, $44 million contract? That's the question that I have. If the answer is yes, and we'll never know the answer. We'll never know the answer. I'm not even going to look for an answer. I find it very odd that Allen Lazard is already in New York. This is the second offseason in a row we've seen teams do some bitch-ass shit for Aaron Rodgers. It didn't work in Denver when they gave the job to a guy that didn't deserve it, all right, because they thought he could recruit Aaron Rodgers to Denver, and we saw how that blew up in their face. He didn't even make it out of the season, okay? Didn't even make it out of the season. And now we're seeing the Jets trip over themselves to accommodate a guy that hasn't even agreed to come to your football team yet. Now, he's coming. Make no mistake about it. I don't think they're signing Allen Lazard to a 4-year, $44 million deal if Aaron Rodgers isn't coming. But I'm also hearing that Randall Cobb may be coming to the Jets and he wants Odell Beckham Jr. And I'm like, what else? Does he want to sleep with your wife? Are you going to let him do that too? He wants to sleep with your wife for a night? You going to do that too to get him to come to New York as well? How long are we going to allow Randall Cobb to steal money in the league because Aaron Rodgers, that's Aaron Rodgers' boy? Like, they got to cut this shit out, man. Randall Cobb is good for 5 or 6 games a season. He's going to get injured and he's going to miss games. How long is this charade going to carry on? Odell Beckham Jr. is one thing. And last time I checked, the Jets have receivers, do they not? Now, Denzel Mims, failed experiment. I get that. But you had the rookie of the year on offense. I think Corey Davis is still there. Last time I checked, he signed a 3-year deal 2 years ago. So unless you're going to cut him with 1 year left, you got an exit ramp. I think Corey Davis is still there. You drafted Elijah Moore. Now, I know that there was some hard feelings there. He wasn't happy about playing time, all that good stuff. You know, maybe you do need receivers. Maybe you do. I'm just saying. I thought you had some receivers already. I didn't realize we needed all this stuff. This shit is getting out of hand, man. But as long as you get your guy, I find it very ironic, too, that Brett Favre went through this whole ordeal with the Packers late in his career. He wanted out. He was retiring. Then he wanted to come back. They had already moved on to Aaron Rodgers. And he ended up with the Jets. How fitting is it that Aaron Rodgers doesn't know what he wants to do? Does he want to retire? Does he want to come back? They've already moved on to Jordan Love. And now he's going to get traded to the Jets. I mean, isn't that synchronicity or what? Wow. Anyway, Alan Lazard, 4-year, $44 million contract. Okay. That just rubbed me the wrong way. Quincy Williams, linebacker, re-signing on a 3-year, $18 million deal. Maxes out at 21 with incentives. Love him. That's the brother of Quinnen Williams. They got him from the Jags. This guy is physical. He flies around. Love me some Quincy Williams. Chuck Clark acquired in a trade with the Baltimore Ravens in exchange for a 2024 7th-round pick. So they get a veteran safety on the back end of that defense to kind of help things with a very young secondary that's going to come into play there. And Greg Zuerlein signing on a 1-year deal. It's important. Don't dismiss the importance of a quality kicker in this league. I'm going to make sure that every single kicker that signed somewhere gets some shine tonight because kickers matter. Kickers matter. AFC North, we move on. Baltimore Ravens haven't done anything. Trayvon Mullen, they re-signed him to a 1-year deal. Good for you. They did slap the non-exclusive franchise tag on Lamar Jackson. There was some news today with Lamar. He came out and refuted a report that said he turned down $200 million of fully guaranteed money. It was like the highest offer of guaranteed money I received was 3 years, $133 million. I turned that down, okay? But $200 million? Nah, I didn't turn that down. Come again. So he's out here righting some wrongs. But the Ravens haven't done much of anything to this point. Neither has the Cincinnati Bengals. All they have done is lose a bunch of guys. Samaje Perine gone. Both of their safeties. Von Bell now in Carolina. Jesse Bates III, I believe. Where did he end up? Falcons, I think. We'll get there. They've lost quite a few players, have the Cincinnati Bengals, but they did not lose linebacker Jermaine Pratt, who re-signed on a 3-year, $21 million deal. Remember, he made news after the AFC Championship game. He was the guy that shouted at the young edge rusher from Texas who pushed Mahomes when he was out of bounds, picked up the 15-yard penalty, set up the game-winning field goal. He was the one that shouted, "Why you had to hit him, man?" He didn't think he was going to be back in Cincinnati. That's why he was pissed off, because he was like, that might have been my best shot to win a chip, and you just blew it. But he's back. Awkward. Anyway, Cleveland Browns. They re-signed center Ethan Posick, 3-year deal, $18 million. That's a good signing for them. Dalvin Tomlinson signing a 4-year, $57 million contract. That is a big move for them. They really missed the interior presence of the Larry Ogunjobi, who was with them, left in free agency. That was a tough loss for them. I never thought they really rebounded from that inside. So Dalvin Tomlinson is going to come in there, help them clean up the run game, try to collapse some pockets around Myles Garrett, and that's a good move for them. Obo Okonkwo signs a 3-year, $19 million deal coming over from the Rams. That gives them hopefully some pass rush pressure opposite of Myles Garrett, the aforementioned Myles Garrett. So another move made there by the Browns. Steelers. They signed offensive guard Nate Herbig to a 2-year, $8 million deal with 4 of it guaranteed. This is such a Steelers move. The Steelers signed cornerback Patrick Peterson to a 2-year, $14 million deal. Includes $5.85 million. It's probably more like a 1-year deal, but this is such a Steelers move. They stay signing an old, crusty, dusty corner, man. Like dudes that's like 1 foot out the door, 1 foot in the grave. in the NFL graveyard. Ike Taylor was probably like 60 when he retired in Pittsburgh. Um, I'm going back a ways here, but Deshae Townsend was probably like 72 years old when he retired. They went out and got Joe Hayden. Joe Hayden, I think, was about 85 when he hung him up. I mean, he didn't even want to hang him up. The league hung him up. He was old and decrepit when he left. And now they're giving a deal to Patrick Peterson, who is, pushing AARP right now as his insurance. And I don't know why the Steelers do this to themselves every year. But they've lost corners, young ones too, each of the last 2 years. Good luck with Patrick Peterson, man. Good luck. I mean, in your division, with some of the receivers that you currently have to go against, that's not a good look. But hey, to each its own. Good luck with that. So not a lot of action from the AFC North. All right, not a lot of action at all. AFC South. All right, see what they're talking about. And the Texans are going to be extremely busy. They have been like purging this roster over the last 3 years, it feels like. And every year it seems like they got 19 different moves in free agency. I'm still waiting for them to just settle in. It's like they never unpack their stuff. They move to a new house. They leave a lot of their stuff in boxes. They don't put up any pictures. And the next year they're gone. They've moved on to the next house. That's what it feels like every year with free agency with the Texans. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, transactions here in free agency. It's been like this the last 3 years. How many years can you keep doing this? And it's always 1, 2 year deals. Like they haven't committed to anyone yet. I guess it might start now that they're going to get their franchise quarterback, I guess. Speaking of quarterbacks, Case Keenum signs a 2-year, $6.25 million deal. I think this is his second go-round in Houston. So they're preparing for whatever quarterback they take to be groomed by Case Keenum. Not to say that Keenum's going to start, right? But what they're doing is and I'm seeing this now. This is the new thing because it didn't used to be this way. You didn't always have to have a mentoring veteran on the roster waiting with open arms for the young fella that you're about to draft, which I think is a good thing, right? I remember Patrick Mahomes talking about how much being with Alex Smith for that first year was so invaluable to his growth as a quarterback. I can't imagine, even though Brett Favre was probably an ass, I'm pretty sure watching the way he went about his business helped Aaron Rodgers a ton, which is probably why Aaron Rodgers is an ass, because he probably watched Brett Favre. But in any event, it can't hurt to have a veteran, and that's what Carolina just did when they went out and got Andy Dalton. That's what the Texans are doing here, going and getting Case Keenum. They're preparing themselves for whomever they draft. They're going to have a veteran that's going to be able to show that guy the ropes. I love it. I love it. Wide receiver Noah Brown comes over from Dallas, signs a 1-year, $2.6 million deal. So good for him. Robert Woods, I thought this was a great signing by them. And if I were a team like Carolina or one of these other teams out there who really void of receivers, I would have went after Robert Woods. That would have been one of my first free agent targets. Woods goes to Houston, and I think this is going to be an opportunity for him to repair the damage that was done to his career in Tennessee last year, because he's going to play with a young quarterback more likely than not that's going to be throwing the ball a hell of a lot, and he should get some targets this year. 2 years, $15 million, 10 of it fully guaranteed, max value of 17 for Robert Woods. He stays in the AFC South. Tight end Andrew Beck, 2 years, $6.75 million deal. Shaq Mason was traded to the Houston Texans from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I remember how happy my guy Ree was last year when they traded for Shaq Mason from the Patriots. Didn't really make that much of a difference in Tampa last year, but they get a veteran on that offensive line as they try to fortify that line in front of their new quarterback. Scott Quisenberry re-signed with the Texans. Chase Winovich was a guy that I was interested in. He is expected to sign with the Texans. Go figure. You've got a former Patriot executive as the GM, so you're going to see guys like Shaq Mason and Chase Winovich and guys like that end up in Houston. Hassan Ridgeway, 1 year, $3.25 million deal on the defensive line. MJ Stewart, another former New England Patriot, re-signing on a two-year contract. So he'll stay in the Houston, Texas organization. And Jimmy Ward is expected to sign with the Texans. That doesn't sound very reassuring, but sounds like Jimmy Ward may be getting a deal to go to the Texans as well. I actually like what they're building in that young secondary. Adding Jimmy Ward would be a nice veteran piece to what is a very, very young secondary in Houston. Indianapolis, if you're a Colts fan, this has got to be frustrating. I mean, I'm not a big fan of their GM anymore. I've turned on him. I mean, I did a full 180 on that dude, right? Chris Ballard used to be my guy. And his reluctancy to pull the trigger on a quarterback via the draft, instead, taking the coward way out, has rubbed me the wrong way. But his insistence on not being aggressive in free agency, and I don't know their cap situation. It doesn't feel like they spend any money in free agency every year. So I don't feel like they're broke. They're not paying a veteran quarterback, right? I mean, they were paying Matt Ryan, but anyway, they re-signed Tyquan Lewis to a 1-year deal. They re-signed EJ Speed to a 2-year deal, and they signed. When your biggest move is signing a kicker, as if you lost 5 games last year because of poor place kicking. Look, you should have beat the Texans in week 1. You probably could have won 1 or 2 more games with better field goal kicking. But signing Matt Gay is a big effing deal. I talked about him as a guy that the Rams did not franchise tag. He gets a 4-year, $22.5 million deal. But when your biggest move is signing a kicker, that's got to be infuriating because they need receiver help. Again, it's not a great, crop of receivers out here on these streets. But they could use help in other places. They just traded away a corner. They could probably use some cornerback help, but they're going to stick to the draft. And I got to give Chris Ballard credit. He does a really quality job of adding in talent via the draft. Although I haven't loved what he's done on the offensive side of the football from a talent perspective. Specifically at receiver, they're just keeping their own guys. Okay, we'll see what this offseason ends up being. I still contend that they're going to end up drafting someone that's just left at quarterback. Instead of getting the guy that they want, they're going to sit there, wait around, and somebody's going to come up to 3. Arizona clearly is passing on 2023. And if you're passing on 2023, you have no business taking a player at number 3 overall. Get out of there. Let somebody come up and get a quarterback, pick up draft capital, and try to speed the process of turning things around in Arizona up. I swear the Colts are going to mess around and let 3 quarterbacks come off the board in front of them. And they're either going to end up taking whomever's left, or they're going to wait until the 2nd or 3rd round and end up with a Hendon Hooker or something at quarterback. We'll see what happens. I don't like the way they're operating right now. Got a good kicker in Matt Gay, though. Jacksonville Jaguars. They went out and got C.J. Beathard, or they re-signed C.J. Beathard. I didn't even know he was on their roster to a 2-year contract, so he's backing up Trevor Lawrence. Evan Ingram, we know he got the franchise tag. Roy Robertson Harris signed a 3-year, $30 million extension to stay in Jacksonville. He was really good for them last year. And they re-signed Andrew Wingard, their safety that is a core special teamer as well. Andrew Dillard is now a Tennessee Titan. Titans lost a lot of guys in free agency. I told you, when you broke your home, when you got money, you got buku places to go. So they let a lot of guys walk, trying to clean up the books a bit, but they did go out and sign Andre Dillard to a 3-year, $29 million contract. I hope that works out for them because he did not work out in Philadelphia. So you're hoping a clean bill of health is coming to with him to Tennessee, along with a clean slate. And you're hoping that he starts to show on some of the promise that made him a first-round pick some 4, maybe 5 years ago. Feels like eternity when he was selected in the first round. Azeez Al-Shire is going to sign a deal with the Titans. So they essentially swapped out David Long for Azeez Al-Shire. I like both of those linebackers, so he's just got to stay healthy. Azeez Al-Shire just has to stay healthy, but he's a really good football player. Denver Broncos. So now we're off to the AFC West. Broncos got busy in free agency this year. They got new ownership. They got a new coach, and they are going to work. Sean Payton is like, I did not come here to lose, to be embarrassed, none of that shit. So we're going to get this shit right. We're going to go out here. We're going to fix this offensive line. We're going to fortify this defensive line, and we're going to get busy. So he starts by going out and getting Jarrett Stidham. 2 years, $10 million contract. I love it because that's a shot. Pop, pop. That's a couple of warning shots in the air to Russ, man. I'm not here for the bullshit, bro. All right, I will sit your monkey ass down. If we have any issues, and I don't see it escalating to that. This is more of if Russ breaks his thumb or something like that, you got Jarrett Stidham, your season's not over, right? Last year, 2 years ago, they were screwed when the quarterback went down. I think who they have in there. I don't know. Was it Teddy? I think it was Teddy Bridgewater. If Drew Lock's coming in off the bench, you're in trouble. Pretty much is what I'm trying to convey. You don't want to be in that position. So they're not now. Jarrett Stidham can come in and fire some darts, and it gives them a little bit of, like I said, a little bit of insurance just in case Russ is tripping. If Russ ain't cooking, you got another chef. You got a sous chef now. Samaje Perine, this was an interesting deal because I like the running backs that they have in Denver, and I'm a big Williams fan out of North Carolina. I know he tore his knee up last year. I don't know if this is an indictment on him or if they just want more depth at the running back position, but Samaje Perine comes over on a 2-year, $7.5 million deal. This is a misconception about Sean Payton for a lot of people, that he just wants to throw the football. You think of Sean Payton, you think of, Drew Brees, you think of these explosive offenses. Sean Payton wants to run the damn football. Sean Payton is a balanced ass coach offensively. He came up with Taysom Hill. Why? To create another way to run the damn football. Like, don't get it twisted. Sean Payton will run that bitch down your throat. And so I'm not shocked that they went out and got Samaje Perine, because Payton has always been a guy that has had multiple backs tote the rock. I just feel like Samaje is very similar to Williams. So, we'll see. Chris Manhertz comes over. That's a sign that, hey, we trying to run the ball. He's a blocking tight end in this league, coming over from Carolina. I think that's where he was last. His ass can block. So, he's coming in telling you what we about to get done. Speaking of running the football, Ben Powers comes over from Baltimore. 4 years, $52 million, includes 28.5 guaranteed. Again, a physical offensive lineman on the interior that moves bodies and clears out space. Mike McGlinchey comes over from the San Francisco 49ers on a massive 5-year, $87.5 million deal, 50 of it guaranteed. So you see what they're doing up front, fortifying this offensive line. I love this move. This is probably my favorite move that they made. Defensive lineman Zach Allen agrees to a 3-year, $45.75 million deal, 32.5 guaranteed. I told anybody that would listen that this guy is about to explode. He learned from J.J. Watt, who he idolized. Did y'all realize J.J. Watt had 12.5 sacks last year? The year he retires, he had 12.5 sacks. Did you realize that? I did not realize J.J. Watt was still out there getting busy like that. Did you? Sheesh. G. Fonche. Zach Allen learned a lot from J.J. Watt, and he played really well last year, and I think he's on the cusp of, a 10.5 sack season. Like, I think that's coming down the pipeline. If he's healthy, he's a problem, man. I love that sign. I thought Arizona was reckless for letting him leave, but hey, when you're broke, you're home. Alex Singleton is back in Denver on a 3-year, $18 million deal. I liked him in Philadelphia. Thought he played well for the Broncos last year. And obviously, they did as well. Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs. Oh, let me not be disrespectful. The Super Bowl champion. Kansas City Chiefs. Put a little respect on their name. When you win the Super Bowl, people are going to come and poach your roster. That's a part of the game, right? So the Chiefs, no exception. But they did go out and sign Jawan Taylor. They're going to lose Orlando Brown. They've already lost their right tackle, Andrew Wiley. So a couple of bookend tackles now moving on. They replaced one of them with Jawan Taylor, signing a 4-year, $80 million deal with 60 of it guaranteed. So that's a big move because he's going to man up the right side of that offensive line. I'm anxious to see what they do on the left side. I'm assuming they're going to draft a tackle in the first round of this year's draft. And I wouldn't be shocked if they packaged up some picks to go up and get a guy if they need to. So we'll see what happens. Tershawn Wharton re-signs on a 1-year deal. I remember this guy being the talk of the town 2 years ago. Oh my God, Tershawn Wharton, this, that, and the third. And then I haven't really heard anything from him. But interesting stuff there. So speaking of interesting, the Las Vegas Raiders. Oh, man. I just got off the phone with my buddy. He's a big Raiders fan. I talk about him all the time because he always calls me looking for, me to be a voice of reason for him. And I told him when they got Josh McDaniels as their head coach, I said, bro, buckle up. You're about to go on a miserable ride. He is going to destroy your franchise from within, just like he did in Denver. He's got a lot of bad juju coming with him, and karma doesn't forget, and karma does not miss. I said, your ass is grass, bro. And he's like, I'm just confused. I really don't know how to feel about what we're doing right now. We have no direction. I said, bro, I don't really know what to tell you. He's like, I was really looking for you to tell me that it's not okay to feel the way that I feel. I said, hey, I think you should feel the way that you feel because you trade away Darren Waller, one of your best players. You trade away you release Derek Carr. And look, that felt like a move that was a long time coming. Every year, we, people that talk about the NFL, members of the media, fans of that team, every year it felt like we were trying to get rid of Derek Carr. Trade him, release him, something. It's always something. We were always trying to get rid of Derek. And finally, Josh McDaniels had the stones to do it, right? But you're going to replace him with Jimmy Garoppolo? I mean, we're supposed to be excited about that if you're a Raiders fan? You're right. Now, he took solace in telling me that they called the Bears at 1. I said, okay, that's cool. You were never going up. You were just checking the temperature to see what it was going to cost. You were never going up to number 1. But at least you called, if that makes you feel better. But I said, he's going to blow your shit up, bro, just like he did the Broncos. He went to Denver, traded Jay Cutler, traded Brandon Marshall, left them destitute, desperate and impoverished when he left. And that's the same thing's going to happen to the Raiders. Darren Waller's gone. Josh Jacobs, I think, isn't going to get a long-term deal there. I think he's going to play one more year. He's already frustrated at what's going on. I know you saw the tweet when they traded Darren Waller, right? He's unhappy. Nobody likes Josh McDaniels. They had a poll that they took with the players. Nobody likes him, right? This shit's going sideways already. And the bad part is you can't get rid of him because the GM's is his boy. They're both from New England. So that ship's going to have to completely wreck and sink. It's not like the GM is disconnected from the coach and he can get rid of him and get another guy in there. You're screwed. And so Derek Carr's gone. Darren Waller's gone. Josh Jacobs will be gone soon. And I already told him, I said, the minute Derek Carr didn't work, Devontae Adams was going to demand a trade. And I said, the clock's ticking. I'll give him a year before he wants out. He didn't sign up for this shit. And understand that he was cool initially when Derek Carr, got sent home and we knew the end was near and imminent. He was cool with that because he was like, oh, I'm going to just recruit my boy Aaron Rodgers here. He didn't leave Aaron Rodgers to play with Jimmy Garoppolo. I assure you of that. So stay tuned as the Raiders turn. This shit's going to get ugly. And it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. But in saying that, the Raiders have been busy turning their program into the Patriots West. And so first thing up, if you're going to turn into Patriots West, you got to have a quarterback, right? That came from New England. So they go out and get Jimmy Garoppolo on a 3-year, $72.75 million deal, 24.25 of it guaranteed in year one. So that's a thing, right? Running back Amir Abdullah re-signs on a 1-year, $1.75 million deal. Josh Jacobs received the non-exclusive franchise tag. You can't have a New England West without getting a receiver, right? Got to have a New England Patriots receiver. So they go out and get Jacoby Myers. 3 years, $33 million deal, 21 of it guaranteed. Good for him. I like Jacoby Myers a lot, man. Good for him. Glad he's getting some bread out. And he's going to be the number one here shortly in Vegas once Devontae Adams demands a trade. He's going to be the number one receiver. Brandon Parker re-signed on a 1-year deal, and Marcus Epps comes over, who had a strong campaign for the Philadelphia Eagles. This makes me smile. Every time the Eagles lose a piece, my heart smiles just a tad bit. You might not see it on my face, but my heart just has a little gleam every time I see one of the pieces of their defense being ripped away. Marcus Epps was huge in that secondary for them last year. 2-year, $12 million deal. 8 of it guaranteed. Chargers really don't do much in free agency. It's probably really frustrating for their fan base every year. They sit and watch other fans enjoy upgrading their roster. They kind of stand pat, do nothing. And this year it's even worse because not only are you standing pat, watching other teams get better while you do nothing, you're now, and I say that last year they were very aggressive. If you recall last year, they went out, they traded for Khalil Mack. They went out, they signed J.C. Jackson. They made moves last year. They were shaking and moving last year. Last year was an abnormal offseason for them because that's not really how they get down. But they're back to their usual shenanigans this year, and it's a little worse this year because the most important player on their offense each of the last 2 to 3 years has been running back Austin Eckler. And somewhere along the lines, contract talks broke off. He became frustrated. Seemed like the team wasn't going to budge on what they thought his value was, which I can't imagine them trying to lowball the dude that's been dragging that carcass of an offense along when Mike Williams is hurt, when Keenan Allen can't stay healthy, and you've got nothing. And this guy's dragging your offense along and you can't find it in your wallet to pay this man. That's disrespectful. I don't blame him for wanting to seek a trade. And we'll see what happens. That seems like a situation that is going in the wrong direction. And for a Chargers team that you felt like they were on the cusp of maybe turning a corner with 1 or 2 pieces offensively, that's not the guy you really want to lose, man. That's unfortunate, but we'll see. That's a situation worth monitoring there. Quarterback Easton Stick is back in LA with the Chargers on a 1-year deal. Eric Kendricks, who just left the Vikings after a long stint there, I think about 9 years in Minnesota, now going to be in Los Angeles with the Chargers on a 2-year deal worth $13.25 million. So we'll see if Eric Kendricks still has good football left in the tank. So now we shift over to the NFC East, where we find the Dallas Cowboys, who got busy today. They were sitting idle the first day of the tampering period, hadn't done much of anything. They were seeing a lot of their players vacate, but they finally jumped in the fray today. I thought the NFC East made the most impactful moves of the day today. The NFC East as a whole I thought was very, very busy today, and really over the last 2 days in particular. But Dallas, we know they franchise tagged Tony Pollard. Leighton Vander Esch re-signed on a 2-year, $11 million deal, so they will retain his services. A guy that I really like, I've been telling anybody that will listen, I love me some Donovan Wilson, the safety for the Dallas Cowboys. He re-signed on a 3-year, $24 million deal. First 2 years are fully guaranteed, $13.5 million. I would have loved to have seen him go somewhere else. He played some good-ass football for them last year. But this was the big move of the day for Dallas. Stephon Gilmore acquired in a trade with the Indianapolis Colts. And all they had to give up was a 5th-round compensatory pick in this year's draft. I mean, again, Stephon Gilmore is no spring chicken. If I'm not mistaken, he's got to be 32, 33 years old. I welcome him into the division. It's another guy that my best receiver blazes every time he sees it. We stay smoking on a Gilmore or Slay Pack. And so I always welcome dudes into the division who can get work. All right. I figured if you couldn't get, you can't get work, we can give you some work. So saw Gilmore last year, gave him some work over 3 bills last year. They can come to the division and get it twice a year, like Darius Slay is getting it. So welcome to the division, Stephon. Good luck, bro. You're going to need it. So Dallas finds a guy opposite, which has been a sore spot for them. They need a guy opposite of Trayvon Diggs. It's been pretty bad on the opposite side. That's where teams were really attacking them. So now they feel like they got a guy. The Giants went off in these 2 days. I actually like what they've done. Daniel Jones obviously gets the 4-year, $160 million deal. We've talked about that already. Saquon Barkley, that was a move made in conjunction with the Jones move. They slapped the franchise tag on him. Matt Breida back with the Giants. That's a good move there to keep a quality backup running back in-house. Sterling Shepard, I think he's just a fan favorite, a guy that they just really love. But he really hasn't done anything other than get hurt in New York. He really hasn't been healthy. He's a good receiver when he's healthy. He's just never healthy. So I guess it's a 1-year, $1.3 million. Like it's not costing you a lot. So I guess there's that. But he hasn't done anything. I assumed he had played his last game. When he tore his ACL, I thought that was his last game in a Giants jersey. Interesting. Darren Waller, this is the big move that was made today. I absolutely love this for the Giants. I absolutely hate this for us being the Washington Commanders. We have tight end issues, and it's not going to get any better dealing with one of the best tight ends in all of football. Darren Waller acquired in a trade from the Vegas Raiders in exchange for a 2023 3rd-round pick. I'm saying to myself, if all it was going to take was a 3rd-round pick, other teams weren't in on this. I mean, I know my team wasn't going to be in on it, right? They think their tight end room is spectacular for some strange, odd reason. But I like our room. I don't love it. But a 3rd-round pick for Darren Waller? I mean, that's a good trade for the Giants, man. And he just got paid last offseason, so it's not like you got to rip up his deal and give him new money. Maybe he wants new money. I don't know, but that's a good move for the Giants, man. You went from having no targets to adding Darren Waller, and I'm assuming they're going to draft a receiver with their 1st-round pick this year. And then you uncovered maybe 1 or 2 guys last year out of necessity, like Isaiah Hodgins. And so you went from not having anything. Richie James played well for you last year to now all of a sudden you start properly slotting some of these dudes. Like Richie James is at a bare minimum a 3rd option, probably at best a 3rd option. You add in Darren Waller, a number 1 wide receiver. They got the kid that they drafted last year that tore his ACL. He'll come back, and he'll fit somewhere in there. They could go from not having anything to having a bunch of stuff. Sterling Shepard comes back if he's healthy. Man, I love that move of Darren Waller. I hate it for the rest of the division, specifically my Commanders, who struggle to cover tight ends on a weekly basis. Raheem Nunez Roches comes over from Tampa Bay. I always liked him. He reminds me so much of another three-name guy in Ricky John Francois. So another aggressive guy that loves to penetrate, get into the backfield. That's a solid move for the Giants there. Jared Davis re-signs with them, but this is a big one too. Bobby Okereke signed on a 4-year, $40 million deal, 22 of it guaranteed. A guy that I was eyeballing. I was side-eyeing. I was like, hey, Colts, I'm watching your stuff, man. In case you didn't know, I'm eyeballing your stuff over here from afar. And apparently the Giants were too. And they was like, beat you to the punch. Not that we were looking to spend $40 million on a linebacker. Clearly we weren't. But they like their Stanford backers in New York. They went out and got the linebacker from the Packers a couple of years ago, who ended up being really good for them, who went to Stanford, and now they get Bobby Okereke. Their defense was already really solid. He's going to add another wrinkle to their defense. That's a great signing by the Giants. Also, they re-signed punter Jamie Gillen to a 2-year, $4 million deal. Eagles have lost quite a few players, specifically on the defensive side of the football. Obviously, they lost the big-time defensive tackle who signed a big deal with the San Francisco 49ers. They lost, I just told you about one of their safeties who went to the Raiders. I think they lost one more player as well. So they're starting to be poached, as you would expect. I thought they pushed most of their chips to the center of the table last year. Going to be interesting to see if they're able to kind of keep the crux of that roster intact and make a run at it again this upcoming year. But one guy that will not be a part of the mix, conceivably after this move has been made, is Miles Sanders. Why? Because the Eagles signed Rashad Penny to a 1-year, $1.35 million deal. Only $600K guaranteed. So they're not on the hook for anything if this doesn't work out. This is a guy that, when he's healthy, is shown to be extremely dynamic in Seattle. But that's the problem. He's rarely ever healthy. And so it'll be interesting to see if he can stay healthy. If he can, behind that line, he could be a very, very big problem, because he is explosive and dynamic and a home run hitter when he touches it. So could be a big move for them. Could end up being a mistake moving on from Miles Sanders. We'll see. Boston Scott, 1-year, $2 million contract to remain in Philadelphia. Jason Kelce, this was a big one. Mulled over the decision whether to retire or not, decided to come back and play again. 1 year, $14.25 million. Good for him. When he hangs it up, he'll be in the Hall of Fame 4 years from whenever that takes place. But he'll be back manning up that offensive line that is one of the, if not the best in the NFL once again. Brandon Graham comes back to the Eagles and re-signed a 1-year deal up to $6 million. I've read something where he said, it's not about the money for me. It's about staying in Philadelphia. They're about to go on a run, and I want to be a part of it. I was like, run these. How about you run that? All right, run these. All right, y'all ain't running nothing. And then cornerback James Bradbury, who I assumed wasn't going to be back. And it had nothing to do with the penalty in the Super Bowl. I just figured they'd draft a first-round corner and move on from him. That was the assumption. Like, they brought him here on a 1-year contract to see if they could win a Super Bowl. But after the season, he was going to have to get his money elsewhere. Played really well. And apparently the Eagles appreciated that. And so much so, they gave him a 3-year, $38 million contract, 20 of it guaranteed, with a max value of 44 with incentives. It's more like a 2-year deal based off the guarantees, but interesting move. So they do hold on to a couple pieces of that defense in Graham and Bradbury. We'll see what else happens with them. They still haven't done anything with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. He hasn't signed anywhere else. I got my eyes on that. He's such a huge part of their secondary. If they don't get him back, they're in trouble. Big, big, big trouble. I still think he's going to end up in Philadelphia. We'll see. Washington Commanders, very busy in day one, not so much in day number 2 of the tampering period. They started out signing offensive lineman Nick Gates to a 3-year, $16.5 million deal. Can get up to 18 with incentives. $8 million of it is guaranteed. Andrew Wiley, offensive tackle of the Super Bowl defending champion Kansas City Chiefs. 3-year, $24 million deal to come over and man up the right tackle position for the Commanders. Daron Payne kicked off the proceedings for the Commanders by signing a 4-year, $90 million contract, 45 of it fully guaranteed, 60 total in guarantees for him, 28 upon signing for the Pro Bowl defensive tackle who had 11.5 sacks this past season. Well-deserved. Cody Barton signs a 1-year fully guaranteed contract. I'm becoming more and more uneasy about that signing because people are telling me, I got Seahawks fans rolling up on me and saying, bro, that's your new starting middle linebacker. And I'm like, hey, don't tell me that, man. Son. Don't say that to me, son. Don't say that to me. All right? I ain't trying to hear that noise. All right? Get out my ear. I ain't trying to hear that shit. Back up. I ain't trying to hear that shit. So, it's starting to feel real like iffy over here. Like they might be like, yeah, we think we upgraded over Cole Holcomb. I hope I'm tripping, right? My insecurities are showing. I'm tripping and I got nothing to worry about. That's what I hope. But my mind is like, bro, if they was going to re-sign Cole, they would have did it already. What's the holdup? What are we waiting on? Good question. David Mayo re-signed on a 1-year deal. Washington claimed cornerback Cameron Dantzler off of waivers from the Minnesota Vikings, former 3rd-round pick. And Danny Johnson comes back on a 2-year, $7 million deal, 2.75 of it guaranteed. Good for Danny Johnson. Really appreciated what he was able to do in the absence of a couple of players last season when pressed into action. We go to the NFC North, all right? And the Bears, man, we knew they had a bunch of cap space. We knew they were the team with the most cap space heading into free agency. I didn't know how they were going to spend it, but they're spending it quite well. I like what the Bears are doing right now. Cannot lie. Love the trade that they made getting out of one. Could they have gotten more? I think they could have gotten more. But they was like, we don't need more. We just need more, as in DJ Moore. So they signed Kerry Blasingame to a 2-year extension, so he's back with the team. DJ Moore, as we just talked about, acquired in a trade with the Carolina Panthers. Panthers come up to number 1 overall. I've got some more thoughts on that trade. I want to clarify how I feel about that trade. Maybe I'll do that at the end of the show if I don't forget. If I do forget, I'll do it some other time. We got plenty of time to talk about it. Anyway, that's a great move because there's really nothing to be had in free agency at receiver. As I've talked about, Jacoby Myers and Alan Lazard are your highest paid receivers to this point. Like, there's nothing out here in these streets at receiver. And then the draft isn't much better. Right. There are going to be some guys, and there'll be 1 or 2 guys that may end up being pretty good. But I liken it to that year where the first receiver didn't come off the board until like 21, and it ended up being Josh Doxson at 22 and Will Fuller the 5th at like 21. And then it was somebody else trash at like 25 or 6. And then the best receiver ultimately ended up being Michael Thomas, and he went in the 2nd round to the Saints. I think that's how this year's draft is going to be, right? Nobody really is going to be all that dominant in the 1st round. I think, a guy like Jordan Addison is going to be a good football player, though. Anyway, I digress. Nate Davis, offensive guard out of Tennessee. Remember, I told you the Titans lost quite a few players in free agency. This was one of the ones I had my eye on. I was like, yo, Nate, what's good with you, bro? He was like, what's good, man? I was like, so? He was like, hey, I'm out your price range. I was like, hey, cool. I ain't got nothing for you, bro. 3 years, $30 million for the interior offensive lineman from the Titans. So that's a guy's going to come in and be physical up front. Edge rusher DeMarcus Walker agreed to a 3-year deal. That's a big move there. He's just starting to blossom and come into his own in the league. And so they're hoping he fully blossoms in Chicago. Tremaine Edmonds is the jewel of this crop of free agents. 4 years, $72 million, 50 of it guaranteed. And they have a defensive-minded head coach, Matt Eberflus, who wants to play cover two. In order to play cover two effectively, you need a middle linebacker. He had one in Indianapolis that made his defense go. And what is he? Shaquille now, right? Shaq now, right? I always forget his name because he changed his first name. And so it's Shaq Leonard, right? Shaq Leonard now. That's what we're doing now, right? Yeah. So he had Shaq Leonard that made that defense in Indy go. And he needs that. They had that, and he wanted out. They traded him away to Baltimore and Roquan Smith. And so he needed to get that back. And now he's got a big, rangy, long linebacker and Tremaine Edmonds manning up his defense. And I'm going to be excited to watch the Bears defensively now with Tremaine Edmonds being added to the mix. That's a hell of a signing there. TJ Edwards, they weren't done at linebacker. TJ Edwards, who I thought was spectacular for the Philadelphia Eagles, that was the last guy that I couldn't think of on their defense. They got poached. They lost the defensive tackle. They lost Marcus Epps, the safety. They lost TJ Edwards at linebacker. So they lost a guy at each level, did the Philadelphia Eagles. TJ Edwards, 3-year, $19.5 million contract, 12 of it guaranteed. So they got two really good backers there to help that defense. And I think they were already not terrible defensively. They weren't great, but they weren't terrible. They were just young, and they needed a couple pieces. They may have added those pieces. The secondary is extremely young, but extremely talented. Now with these guys coming up front, they still need somebody to get to the quarterback. They're hoping DeMarcus Walker can help with that, but they're going to need more than him. If they can find somebody to get to the quarterback, which they have draft capital now, the Bears could be dangerous. As early as 2023. And obviously Justin Fields is going to be the difference maker on the offensive side, but the defense is going to come along with what Matt Eberflus preaches and what he's capable of doing. The defense will be better in 2023 with these moves that they've made. Detroit Lions re-signed running back Craig Reynolds. Last time I checked, I thought they were sniffing around David Montgomery. I don't know if anything materialized with that. I'll keep my eye on that because, a lot of times what happens with players like that, they stay in the division. Jamal Williams comes to Detroit from where? Green Bay, because you see those players twice a year for 2-3 years at a time. You become very fond of their game, and when they become available, you value them more than someone outside of the division because you played them more. So I wouldn't be shocked to see a guy like David Montgomery leave Chicago and go to Detroit because the Lions value him. If they were to do that, that would probably spell the end of Jamal Williams, who I just felt like was such a big part of their culture and what they were building in Detroit. I just didn't see a future in Detroit without him there. But clearly there were other teams that were interested in Jamal Williams and what he brings to the table. We'll see what happens. If they end up signing David Montgomery, that means that's the end of Jamal Williams in Detroit. But keep an eye on that. Isaiah Buggs re-signed on a 2-year deal, up to $6 million. John Kaminsky also re-signed in Detroit. I think that's a 2-year deal as well. Yeah, $8.5 million, 4 of it guaranteed. Alex Anzalone back in Detroit. And then they went out and signed Cameron Sutton to a 3-year, $33 million deal. Includes $21.5 million guaranteed. So they pry him away from the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I told you the Steelers have been losing corners. I think they lost a corner each of the last 2 years. And Sutton was a really good one for them. Remember, the Lions were sniffing around Jalen Ramsey and all of that stuff. So you knew they were in the market for a corner, and they get Cameron Sutton to go opposite of Jeffrey Okudah. And we'll see if that proves to be a good move for them or not. Green Bay Packers. Keyshawn Nixon re-signs on a 1-year deal. That's it. Sucks to be a Packers fan this time of the year. They do this shit every year, man. If you're a Packers fan, you've probably become accustomed to this. This isn't your time of the year. So, yeah, that stinks. But you are going to trade Aaron Rodgers here shortly. Don't know what you're going to get for him, but yeah, that's going to happen here shortly. So stay tuned for that. Minnesota Vikings. They re-signed Nick Mullins, bring him back to back up Kirk Cousins. Thought I found this interesting. They're not going to engage in contract negotiations with Kirk Cousins. This is the last year of his deal. He hasn't been stealing, but Kirk I think the 2 best players I've ever seen in NFL history at finding their way back into the bread line and cutting people is Kirk Cousins and Darrelle Revis. I don't know if 2 players have manipulated the system any better than those 2 boys. And Ndamukong Suh's done a pretty damn good job as well. Every time I look up, he's on another 2-year, 25 or 2-year 20 or 1-year 14. Ndamukong's ate pretty well, also, but I don't think anybody's ate better than Kirk Cousins and Darrelle Revis over the years, man. But the Vikings are like, you already got enough money from us, Kirk. You got 1 more year on the deal. Play that shit out. We'll see what happens after that. So anyway, Josh Oliver agrees to a 3-year, $21 million deal, 10.75 of it guaranteed. So that's some good money for a tight end that I really like coming out of San Jose State once upon a time. Center Garrett Bradbury is back on a 3-year deal worth $15.75 million. I was side-eyeing him as well. Like, hey, man, what's up, Garrett? He was like, what's up? I was like, ain't nothing much, just chilling. He was like, hey, that's what's up, man. I was like, so he's like, I'm going back to Minnesota, bro. Don't even waste your time. Cool. All right. Edge rusher. Marcus Davenport signs a 1-year, $13 million contract. If he's healthy, that's a great move because it gives you someone opposite of Danielle Hunter. If Hunter's healthy and Davenport's healthy, that's a formidable group, especially now. Remember, there's a little bit of strife between Zadarius Smith and the Vikings right now. He wants out, and the Vikings are like, bro, get out my face. We're not trading you. We're not even talking about that. Stop playing with me. And you on the contract. I ain't even trying to hear what you're talking about. We'll see how that gets resolved, if cooler heads prevail or if they ultimately have to acquiesce and get rid of this man. But imagine a defensive line that goes Danielle Hunter, Marcus Davenport, and Zadarius Smith. They kick Smith inside on 3rd downs and rush. Sheesh! G-Fun-Chi! Good luck stopping those boys on a 3rd and long. That's a good move for the Vikings there. And remember, they also moved on from Adam Thielen as they starting to purge that roster of some of the older veterans. NFC South. Atlanta Falcons, who, again, we talked about the Bears having the most cap space. The Falcons had the 2nd most cap space, and they were conducting themselves as a team that had some money to burn, boy. They was on some Friday time right here, man. Just got paid Friday night. Man, they was out here getting busy. Taylor Heineke is up first, 2-year, $20 million deal. good for Taylor Heineke. You know, me being a Commanders fan and what he was able to do in Washington. And look, that man was out of the league on his sister's couch 2.5 years ago to be where he is now. And I said it in the moment when he had the diving play against Tampa Bay. I said he just played his way into the league. He'll never be a full-time starter in this league, but what he's effectively done is he didn't have to go back to school to finish any test, to do anything in math. He's carved out a niche for himself. To me, the best position in all of in the NFL, probably in all the sports. You probably can't get any better than a bench player in the NBA because all your shit is guaranteed. You just if you can walk and chew bubble gum and you 6'8" with a wingspan, and you like the 11th dude on the NBA bench and you ain't really getting minutes, but you getting bread. That's a pretty good gig. I don't know if it's any better gig in the world of sports though than a backup quarterback that don't really play. Now Heineke hasn't been that, and he won't be that in Atlanta either. He'll probably be starting like week 6 for the Falcons. But as long as he is able-bodied and wants to play, he'll keep getting these 2-year, $7, $8, $9 million deal. He'll walk away with close to $70, $80 million when it's all said and done, when his career is over. And that's good for him, man. I told Washington fans, I don't think he's coming back. I said that the other night. Somebody had a super chat where they said, after we signed Deron Payne, up next, Heineke and Cam Curl. And I'm like, let me amend that statement. I don't think Heineke's coming back. I was like, Cam Curl is next. I don't think Heineke's coming back. He did not sound like a man coming back. We'll talk more about that on a Washington show, though. Fullback Keith Smith re-signs with the Falcons. Tight end Jonnu Smith acquired in a trade from the Patriots to the Falcons. 7th rounder is all it took. Good for Jonnu Smith getting out of New England. It never really worked for him. They wanted to go back to that 2 tight end look they had once upon a time with Gronk and Aaron Hernandez. They went out and got Jonnu Smith. They went and got Hunter Henry, and they thought they were going to recreate that, and it just never materialized for whatever reason in New England. And so he gets a fresh start. And now they're going to have a hell of a 2 tight end set in New England, or in Atlanta rather, with Jonnu Smith and my man from Florida. Why am I blanking on his name? That's going to be pretty hard to stop, when they put those 2 on the field. 2 good, really, really good athletes. Caleb McGarry comes back on a 3-year, $34.5 million contract. I thought he was going to get away from Atlanta. I thought somebody was going to pay him some ridiculous money, but nobody did. And so he's back in Atlanta, probably where he belongs. Chris Lindstrom. Good to see them holding on to the dudes they spent these first-round picks on, because it's easy to lose 1 or 2 of them. But I remember there was a stretch there where the Falcons seemed like they were drafting first-round offensive linemen every year, Matthews and Lindstrom and McGarry and this guy and that guy. And but they're getting all their guys back. Lindstrom, 5 years, $105 million. I want to say that might be the highest contract we've seen this free agency period. I don't think we've seen, there hasn't been any quarterbacks. There haven't been any edge rushers. There haven't been any receivers getting big deals this year. So I think that's the biggest deal for a guard that we've seen this year. That goes to show you how good Chris Lindstrom is. Now, we'll see that get destroyed here shortly. Chris Jones is going to get a massive deal with the Chiefs. You're going to see some other guys get some deals here in a bit, but good for Chris Lindstrom. Lorenzo Carter re-signing on a 2-year deal to stay in Atlanta. David Onyemata, this was a big one for them. Rustles him away from the New Orleans Saints, where he was probably a pain in their ass, and brings him on board on a 3-year, $35 million deal, 24.5 fully guaranteed. And why that's significant is because they've got one of the better, defensive tackles in football already on their roster. And it's easy to just double team him because he's got no help on that D line. Now you just can't focus on him because Onyemata is good enough to hurt you as well. So It's a good move by the Atlanta Falcons. Caden Ellis, another guy they wrestled away. I told you, a lot of times teams in the division are the most dangerous when you have free agents because they see these players, they know their game, and they respect their game and value it more than teams outside of the division. Case in point again, they go back to the New Orleans Saints store this time for linebacker Caden Ellis, signing a 3-year, $21.5 million deal, 11 of it guaranteed. My question then becomes, did their GM come from New Orleans? Not sure. Some of these moves reek of a guy that had something to do with the process of bringing these guys on board. I'm interested. I'm starting to think, did he come from New Orleans? This feels real New Orleans Saints-ish. Yeah. Anyway, I digress. Jesse Bates, talked about this earlier. Bates signs a 4-year, $64 million contract, $23 million of it guaranteed in the first year. This is a guy that was on the franchise tag last year. Didn't really have a great year this past year, but a fresh start in Atlanta may be exactly what he needs to re-solidify himself as one of the league's better safeties in the league. Bradley Pinion agrees to a 3-year, $8.65 million deal. So they keep Pinion, or they add Bradley Pinion to the mix in Atlanta. Carolina Panthers, we're going to talk about them for a little bit. Bradley Bozeman re-signing on a 3-year, $18 million contract. One of those guys I was side-eyeing on the interior of the offensive line. He stays put in Carolina. Shy Tuttle agrees to a 3-year, $19.5 million deal, 13.5 of it guaranteed. Von Bell signed a deal with the Panthers. I talked about him leaving Cincinnati. He's now in Carolina, which is interesting. I want to see now what they're going to do with their young safety that they have. Von Bell is more of a general back there. We'll see what they'll do playing around with some of those pieces that they have. But Andy Dalton was signed in Carolina today. 1-year, $10 million deal. Andy's been eating good off of these 1-year, $10 million deals. I think he's had one of these each of the last 3 years. I'm just thinking to myself. Now, we talked about this with the Texans already, right? Where you're going to draft a young quarterback. There's no greater value than having a veteran that knows his role. And they probably told Andy, bro, we want you here to mentor whomever we take at 1. But anytime you get a guy like Andy, I'm thinking that you're thinking that Andy's going to have to play. And the only way Andy has to play is if you're drafting Anthony Richardson. Because if I don't intend on Andy playing, why do I need an Andy Dalton? I could get me a lower level backup quarterback that I can pay $6 million instead of 10, right? But Andy is a veteran that has been in this situation before, been on rosters with young quarterbacks. He was just in Chicago with Justin Fields, right? Like, he's been in these situations before. So he knows how to conduct himself. He was in Dallas with Dak. He knew he wasn't going to be the starter in Dallas. He knows his role now, does Andy Dalton. So maybe the value in this deal isn't Andy coming in and playing. It's Andy coming in and mentoring a young quarterback. Because if I'm drafting Bryce Young, I think they're going to draft C.J. Stroud. I've already told you that. But whether it's Stroud or Young, that's a day 1 starter. So I said this with the Texans. Bringing in Case Keenum, this feels like we just want our young quarterback to have a veteran presence in that room with him every single day that he can learn from. And you know what? That's a damn good move. That makes a ton of sense. How many of these young boys come into the league and it's a bunch of youngins in that room, and it's the blind leading the blind, and you're looking over your shoulder. Like, that's what happened in Philadelphia with Carson Wentz. You know, everything was good when it was Nicholas Foles, right? The minute they went and got Jalen Hurts, shit went sideways. Because now I'm looking over my shoulder. Because it's a young boy in there instead of a veteran. Had that been Josh McCown instead of, Jalen Hurts, maybe Carson Wentz is still in Philadelphia to this day. I don't know. I'm just talking. Don't mind me. I'm just telling you. Veterans help. Veterans help. And I like that idea. Robert Griffin III probably doesn't. Look, he was immature, but who knows if instead of it being Kirk Cousins, a fellow rookie in that locker room, if it's, I don't know, who was a veteran back in 2012? I don't know what veteran quarterbacks existed there in my mind. It can't go back that far. You're talking about over a decade ago, but maybe if it was a veteran quarterback on the roster instead of a rookie, maybe he doesn't feel compelled to try to get back so quickly and be, looking over his shoulder and make all these demands and things of that nature. I just think it's a really good idea to have a young guy be mentored by a veteran. I can't help but think I guess there was already a veteran in Washington when they brought in Dwayne Haskins. But I felt like he could have used a real veteran presence when he got here. But I don't know how to take Andy signing a 1-year, $10 million deal. Is it because you're going with the upside of Anthony Richardson at 1, which I think would be a massive mistake? Or is it you just want to have CJ Stroud mentored by Andy Dalton? Either way, it's a solid move for the Panthers. New Orleans Saints. This is an interesting team because I think they've got enough talent to compete for what? I don't know. Don't ask me. But they're not bad enough to just bottom out. Derek Carr comes on board, so automatically they're clearly not waving the white flag. 4 years, $150 million contract, 60 of it fully guaranteed, at signing another 10 guaranteed in year 3, but he only has to be on the roster after year 1, so essentially $70 million guaranteed in year 1. This was the one that kind of confused me. Jameis Winston back on a 1-year deal, max value of $8 million. Still haven't really figured out what Jameis is looking to accomplish. Closer to home, he's from the South. Guess he's like, I'm not looking to ruffle any feathers. I told you there's no better job in the league than a backup quarterback that doesn't play. So, and I think Jameis can be around. He's a good locker room dude from all reports. Again, it's not a bad gig. And I don't know if you want Jameis mentoring your young quarterback, but that's the kind of guy I'm signing if I don't intend on my, if I'm drafting CJ Stroud or I'm drafting Bryce Young, Jameis Winston costs you $6 million. That's what I'm doing. Something like that. I don't need to go out and get Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, again, you're paying him to also mentor a young quarterback, so you add in a couple more million for that. But if I'm not looking for a guy to come in and be a bridge, I'm not paying you $10, $11, $12 million to just sit. That you're playing for that money. If you're coming in to sit and mentor, that's $6-7 million, not 10, 11, 12. But anyway, Michael Thomas back on a new 1-year deal, $10 million contract. That's the max value, or 15 is the max value. But there's a ton of incentives and there's a lot of escalators, and there are things that this is a contract heavy on contingencies. He's going to have to play. He's going to have to catch a certain amount of balls, play a certain amount of snaps. A lot of conditions in this deal, as it should be. The man hasn't really played football in 3 years. I don't even know what Michael Thomas looks like on the football field. I saw him in week 1 against the Atlanta Falcons. He caught 2 touchdown passes. Everybody thought he was back and he was gone before we even got a chance to say, hey, welcome back, man. He was gone. Juwan Johnson, I love this kid out of Oregon. I knew he was going to be good when he just embraced making the move from wide receiver to tight end. Signed a 2-year, $12 million contract, 8.5 of it guaranteed. He was really good for the Saints this past year, and he's only going to get better with Derek Carr being there because Carr loves throwing to tall tight ends, and Johnson fits that bill. So I think his numbers are going to explode this year. Tano Passigno gets a 2-year, $6 million deal coming over from the Chiefs. So they lose Marcus Davenport. They replace him with Tano Passigno. Not a fair trade-off, but he's solid enough. And then DB TJ Gray signs a 3-year deal worth $9.6 million. I'd be lying to you if I said I knew who that was. I'm actually ashamed that I don't know who this is. Because that's some solid money. That ain't like he just a core special teamer. That's some solid money right there. Maybe he is a core special teamer. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, when you're broke, you're home. They just signed Jamel Dean back to the team at the quarterback position. That's it. Hey, man, when you ain't got it, you ain't got it. What you want me to do? NFC West, and this will finish up all of the divisions and teams. Arizona Cardinals, when you're broke, you're home. Corey Clement re-signed on a 1-year deal. Kelvin Beachum re-signed on a 2-year, $5.5 million deal. Kaiser White, another Eagle that has left the nest, signing a 2-year deal with the Cardinals, so that's good there. And then Matt Prater back on a 2-year deal to be the place kicker in Arizona. I have no idea what the Cardinals are doing right now. Again, they need to get out of number 3 as fast as possible. This is going to be a really bad year for them. Like number 1 overall pick in the league next year, bad. If Kyler Murray, like if we get to week 9 and they're 1-7 and they're like, you know what, Kyler, just don't worry about it, dude. We'll see you next year. Don't even trip. They could end up being 2-15, straight up, like no bullshit. We'll see what happens with them because they're going to trade Newt Hopkins here shortly. I don't know where he's going to end up. That's another matter of not if, but when and to whom. So we'll see. Los Angeles Rams, when you broke your home, you know they ain't got no more bread. They've been spending like crazy the last 3 years. Look, they won a Super Bowl. Anytime all of your efforts culminates in a Super Bowl, it's worth it. But, you know, they trying to recoup draft capital. They traded Jalen Ramsey. They got Hunter Long. That is it. They've done nothing else. They've lost some players in free agency, obviously. The 49ers are out here getting after it, man. And they smell a Super Bowl. Like, man, we knocking on the door, man. Somebody got to let us in. Sam Darnold comes over on a 1-year deal. I love this move for them. I mean, and you know what this is. This is a sort of a knee-jerk reaction to, because, you know, Kyle, this has never been Kyle's move. Kyle's more of I'm going to draft a young boy in the 6th, 7th round. I'm going to be straight. But because of the events of last year, he wants to have a veteran quarterback here, which last year Jimmy Garoppolo served as that. He wants to have a veteran in that mix, so he's not relying on a bunch of young boys. But you still got Purdy. You still got Trey Lance. Like, you still got a cupboard full of quarterbacks. But he needed that veteran to kind of bridge the gap. And so Darnold is that guy. 1 year, $4.5 million, 3.5 of it guaranteed, and it can get up to 11.5 with incentives. Jake Brendel back on a 4-year deal, a max value of $20 million, 8 of it guaranteed. So locking up one of their own guys. Javon Hargrave was the big signing. They wrestled him away from Philadelphia 4 years, $84 million for the 11-sack defensive tackle from a season ago. This dude's been backing quarterbacks for the last 2-3 years, so this ain't new to Javon Hargrave. They're getting a guy that deal includes $40 million, and you just look at that defensive line. You got Boza, you got Eric Armstead, you got Javon Kinlaw, and now you got Javon Hargrave. And that's a hell of a rotation, man. Inside, yikes. Kevin Givens signed on a 1-year deal. He's back with the 49ers. Tashawn Gibson comes back on a 1-year deal, $2.9 million for him as well. So the 49ers, I think they upgraded their defense, if that's even possible. They do lose Azeez Al-Shire, but they'll be fine. They've been a linebacker factory out there. They'll be fine. And the Seattle Seahawks. So we know about the Geno Smith deal, 3 years, $75 million, can get up to $105 million in max value. Draymond Jones, 3 years, $51 million, $51.5 million. 35 of it will be paid to him over the first 2 years, $23.5 million in year one. That's a good move because he's one of the young and upcoming defensive linemen. He's starting to figure it out. He was figuring it out last year in Denver. I think he ended up with like 6 sacks or something like that. And you can see the light bulb coming on. He's another one of those dudes. Like they lose him. They went out and got Zach Allen to replace him in Denver. I think this is Seattle replacing a guy that they moved on from last year who went to Kansas City because they couldn't figure out, I guess a good middle ground for the money in Jaron Reed. So Draymond Jones comes in, and I think he's going to be a great move for them there as a young up-and-coming defensive lineman. And then Jaron Reed, I just talked about him, and look who's back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. I didn't even see this. He's back on a 2-year deal, max value of $10.8 million. That was a weird situation how he ended up in Kansas City a couple of years ago. Well, he's back now, like he never left. So their interior of their defensive line just got infinitely better with those 2 moves. So that's where we are in free agency. Let me check to see if anything. I talked about David Montgomery, right? He was sniffing around the Lions, and here it is, 3 years, $18 million deal, 11 of it guaranteed. So David Montgomery goes from Chicago to the Lions. That spells the end of Jamal Williams in Detroit. So we'll see where he ends up. But I've always had a soft spot for David Montgomery. He's one of the more physical runners in the NFL. Got to stay healthy. That's been his bugaboo in his career. But when healthy, he is a problem. And so that is a good move for them. Let me see if anything else. Vikings are finalizing a 2-year, $22 million deal with former Cardinals cornerback Byron Murphy. So they say goodbye to 91-year-old Patrick Peterson and hello to 24-year-old, 25-year-old Byron Murphy. Stark contrast there, but the Vikings need cornerback depth very badly, and they get themselves a starting caliber corner in Byron Murphy. So that's a good move for them. Think that is the only thing that I see here of recent note. Anything else that's transpiring? Let's see. Travis Homer is signing a 2-year deal with the Chicago Bears. So Seahawks lose Travis Homer. I like him a little bit too. He was returning kicks last year. Physical guy, can catch it out of the backfield. That's going to help with the loss of David Montgomery, with the Bears. Let's see what we have here. Talked about that already. Charles Omenihu, I wanted him in free agency. Expected to sign a 2-year deal worth $20 million max value with the Kansas City Chiefs. Remember, they released Frank Clark, who I thought was overrated anyway. And Ominahu, I think, is a really quality pass rusher. I prefer him in a rotational capacity, not a starting capacity, but he'll fit in just fine in Kansas City. Will Charles Ominahu. Let's see. Mike Burton is signing a 1-year deal in Denver to reunite with Sean Payton at the fullback position. Gotta love it. I told you, Sean Payton run the hell out of the football, and he's one of the few teams in the league, one of the few coaches rather in the league that still believes wholeheartedly in the fullback, and that's just another sign of a guy that wants to run the football. So good for him getting something done there. Let's see. I think that's it. Yeah. So, all right, let's get to the comment section. See what you guys have to say. A lot is going on in the last 2 days, as we expected. I think a lot more has transpired in these 2 days than I was expecting. But as the years progress, I think this tampering period has become more and more of the start of the new league year than the actual day itself. So, I mean, teams were doing this back in the day, which is why they created this tampering period, because agents were already talking to teams before they were supposed to be talking to teams. That's how deals were done. It would turn 4:00 and you would hear deals just boom, boom, boom. That's not going to happen if you don't start talking when the deadline starts. You got to already have had things in place, a deal in principle already. If these deals are being announced as soon as the 4:00 hit on the second or third Wednesday in March. So the league just said, okay, you guys are already tampering anyway. Let's just make it legal, right? So it's becoming more of a thing to get it done early and not wait. But yeah, seems like a ton of deals this year, trades and everything. I think that's the new thing in the NFL that we're continuing to get accustomed to, is we're getting trades every offseason, right? That didn't used to be a thing. Reedy Davis, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. If I see a comment from you, I will read it. I do see one above this one. I'll just read that. I'll just read both of these. Reedy writes, "What up, Lou? What's up, Reedy? You think this could be a good season with Dirty Dan still in control? Let's hope he's not in control, but if he is, who knows? We're due for a good season, no matter who's the owner. We're due for one. We still haven't had an 11-win season under Dirty Dan. We're due for one. Why not make it this last one if he's still here? I hope he's gone. I hope we don't play another season under Dirty Dan, as you just called him. I'm ready for his ass. I'm ready to clean shit up. And you can't clean shit up with Dirty Dan still in the building. Also, Reedy writes, Lou, has the rush for free agency stopped so we can focus on the draft? No. Look, you never truly stop focusing on the draft. You just hit the pause button, right? It's a little brief pause, boop, right? But your attention is still being, focused on the draft, but it's just quick break, a little pause button, figure out. But remember, free agency, there are waves. This first wave is where most of the money gets swept up. Then there's a second wave, right? That's the bargain bin basement deals, and that's some of the spillage, as I refer to it, guys that are waiting out for an opportunity. Maybe they're looking for a certain amount of money, wait till the market kind of dries up at one or two positions, and then now you got to come holler at me, and then you've got the post June 1 market, the after the draft market, where teams get players in the draft, and now there's no need for this player or that player because we were able to get two of them in the draft, or we didn't think we would get this guy or this guy, but we did. So now we don't need you. Those guys get cut. So then there's that third wave, So, is the initial rush of free agency almost over? Sure. Usually it's the first 3 or 4 days. That second wave comes in that second week. And then after that, there's a bit of, all right, we're done with that. And then after the draft, towards the post-June 1 cuts, that's when you start to come back around to more guys being available. So, yeah. Let's see. Got another super chat. This one is from my guy, Barrett Downey. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, BD, writes, I love what the team is doing right now. As do I. I did not love Cody Barton. Again, I will love Cody Barton if you told me that Cole Holcomb or some other guy that I view as a true starting middle linebacker is coming. But as time progresses, and it's still early, and I'm not panicking, and I don't want to push off that emotion onto you. But I mean, you're watching this play out like I am. They wanted Danny Johnson back. What did they do? They re-signed Danny Johnson, right? They wanted Khaleke Hudson back. They re-signed Khaleke Hudson. If they want a player back, they wanted Daron Payne. They re-signed Daron Payne. If they really, truly want Cole Holcomb, they would have re-signed him already. I'm starting to think that this is their answer at linebacker. I'm actually, and then here's the problem with this group. I'm going to save that. I'm going to save it for our Washington show. But I love what they're doing as well. I'm right there with you. Ree, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Rarely Even, writes, keeping Jamel Dean was a pleasant surprise. I thought he was good as gone. The cap is cap, Lou. I got it. I thought he was gone too. I had a lot of Washington fans hitting me up saying, hey, what about Jamel Dean? And I'm like, I don't think we're shopping in the corner market per se. This isn't the year we're looking to really be aggressive in free agency, more so the drafts. But Jamel Dean will make a fine addition to some team out there. I thought a team like Pittsburgh would have come calling instead of going and getting Patrick Peterson. But he went back to Tampa. Good for him. I think he got a really solid deal, too, at that. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, JP, writes, Austin Eckler is available for trade after he and the Chargers didn't agree to a contract. If I'm Washington, I pounce on that right now. Not too many guys with this skill set become available like this. Factual. He's still right in that Ron Rivera wheelhouse. I think he's 27 years old. His production has been off the charts the last couple of years. And the beauty of it is he was Mr. Do-It-All in LA with the Chargers. If you bring him to Washington, he's not going to have to be all of that. But in the same regard, I don't know if we could utilize him the way he needs to be utilized. Because they did release JD. I told you I thought his career was over. They released JD McKissick today. Not a surprise. I don't know, with Antonio Gibson still on the roster and Brian Robinson Jr., how many snaps can you possibly get for Austin Eckler? He needs to be on the field. He needs to be fed the football. He needs to be thrown the football. And are we going to get him enough touches? Are we going to – because remember, not only would you have to trade for him, he wants to be paid. That's the problem that he's having in Los Angeles. It's not like you're trading for a contract that's already in tow like the Giants did with Darren Waller, right? Or the Bears did with the Panthers, where guy just got paid last year. You don't have to worry about a deal. You just got to give up draft compensation. Or in the Bears case, you just got to give up the number 1 overall pick. But in the Giants case, you just got to fork over a 3rd-round pick, and you're getting one of the better tight ends in football. You're getting one of the better pass-catching running backs in all of the sport. However, you're going to give up capital, and the Chargers aren't going to just give him away because they know his value. So they're not just going to give him away. It's probably going to take a third-round pick at a bare minimum, and you're going to have to pay him. I just don't see Washington doing it. They may be interested. See, people, I think, misconstrue interested for willing to do a deal. Interested is me picking up the phone and calling you and seeing what's the going rate, what you're looking for. All right. The Raiders were interested in what it would take to get up to number one. Doesn't mean they were going to trade up to number one. They just picked up the phone and said, hey, Chicago, what you thinking about moving number one for? And then when they found out, I was like, okay, yeah, I'll get back to you. Not like giving you 2 1s, you know, a 1 and a receiver and 2 2s or whatever, you know, it would have taken to get the deal done from the Raiders. They might have said, would you, yeah, that Devontae deal is a little too much for me. Give me 3 1s and a 2 and we'll call it a day. It's a little different for them. They don't have a receiver that they want. You got to pay Austin Eckler. That to me usually pushes down how much I give you in draft compensation. Like, for instance, I'll give you an example. When the Cowboys traded Amari Cooper to the Browns, they didn't get as much back in draft compensation as we all thought they would for a receiver the caliber of an Amari Cooper. Why? Because the Browns were doing them a solid by taking him off their hands and the money that they owed him. So you don't get back the compensation that you probably should because they're doing you a solid. When I'm trading for a player and I have to give him a contract, that doesn't mean anything to the team that's trading them. That's not my problem. You know what you got to do if you come in and get him. I still want my draft pick. But I think Washington just called to check and see, you know, what was the going rate. I don't think they're actually going to make a move. I could be wrong. And they could be all over Austin Eckler. But I with already having Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson, I don't think they're going to do that. I don't see them doing that. Ree, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, I don't want Mayfield. Give me Brissett. If Brissett gets beat out, he'll be a great teammate. Baker won't take it lying down if Trask beats him out. So I wanted to ask you this. Are you guys legitimately giving Kyle Trask an opportunity? Because I felt like with all the noise I was hearing coming out of Tampa, that Jimmy Garoppolo was in the mix and all that, I felt like you guys were passing over Kyle Trask yet again. So is he actually getting an opportunity in Tampa this year or not? Yeah, I don't know if Bake's come to the realization that he may not be an NFL starter yet. I think you might be right about that. I think there's still a part of him. And look, he's a competitor, former number one overall pick. There's still a part of him that believes he can start in this league. And so I don't know if he would be receptive to being beat out by Kyle Trask. But Brissett, you're essentially saying you want someone to come in to compete with Kyle Trask that won't beat him if you want Jacoby Brissett. That's basically what you're saying. You can't be okay with Jacoby Brissett being your starting quarterback. You can't be. I get it. You're about to go back to being what you were prior to Tom Brady being there. 7, maybe 8-win team if you're lucky. Heartbreaking losses. Last year, I guess, was a primer for that because even though you had Brady, you weren't winning games last year anyway. But the fact that you just with a straight face said that I'd rather have Jacoby Brissett on my roster, and if he beats out Trask or gets beat out, he'll be okay. That's a tough spot to be in. That's a tough spot to be in, my guy. Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, but you got a chip out of it. And I tell people this all the time. It's always worth it when you get a chip out of it, and you got a chip out of it. Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. who writes, my man Lou, what's good? What's going on with your video channel? Says, question, how would you feel if Washington signed Paris Campbell? I wouldn't have any issues with that. He's got a skill set that I can appreciate because he can run. If he's healthy, he provides another weapon to get the football to, one of those guys that has a Curtis Samuel type of quality to his game, but hasn't been healthy enough. But you can hand him a ball in jet sweeps. You can get it to him on wide receiver screens. He could take the top off the defense. He's a blazer, and we got quite a few Ohio State wide receivers already on the roster. So he'd fit right in. But again, I don't know what the going rate for him is going to be. I don't see receiver as a position that Washington would be looking to spend any kind of coin on when you can just go out in the draft and get a guy if you're looking to do something. Unless you told me Paris Campbell was returning punts all of a sudden, I don't have any interest. The only receiver I would sign would be a guy that I immediately know would come in and fortify the punt returning position for us. If you're not giving me a guy that is a legit punt returner, I'm not really interested in free agency at the receiver position. I'm better off going in the draft, finding a guy that may be able to contribute at receiver, but more likely than not is going to be able to help on special teams at a bare minimum. So I wouldn't have any problems with Paris Campbell. But he's been very injured in his career. And again, I just don't think Washington's looking to spend any money at that particular position. But I wouldn't be against it. Vincent Coe, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Vincent Coe, writes, Seahawks signing players on day one of free agency. Rare. You know what? I think Geno Smith reinvigorated them last year. And they see an opportunity for growth on the interior of the defensive line, which is what they've done, essentially going out and getting a couple of guys. I love the move to go and get the former defensive lineman of the Denver Broncos. I think he's going to be a really good football player. He's just coming into his own. I think it's a great signing. Bringing back Jaron Reed is also a really good move as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's funny when fans of teams who usually aren't active in free agency, or especially early on, it's funny to see them get involved. They don't really know how to act a lot of times. Not saying that you're overly excited, but they usually don't know how to act because that's not what you're used to, right? Let's see, I got another super chat. This one is from Will Kavanaugh. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Will, writes, Lou, I really hope Washington doesn't wait to the last minute again as QBs fall off the board and Ron panics and gets someone like Matt Ryan. And no, I don't think we are getting Ryan. I don't think they're going to panic and do something, knee jerk. They know what they're targeting at quarterback. And again, whoever they bring in here isn't going to beat out Sam Howell anyway. So I really don't care who it is, honestly speaking. The only thing that I'm not, because again, if Sam Howell doesn't work out, and I think he is going to work, but if he doesn't work out, I don't give a shit who the backup is because he's not the answer. So at this point, I don't really care. The only thing that would make me upset about us not getting a quality backup is if we're really good and something happens to Sam and he's going to have to miss 2 or 3 weeks. Then you want a solid backup to come in and just go 2-1 in that 3-game stretch. Or if it's 2 games, just split the difference, go 1-1 and keep us afloat. If it's 4 weeks, go 2-2, go 3-1, right? I don't know what we're going to end up with, but a lot of the guys that have signed already, I didn't anticipate them ending up in. I didn't think the guy was Andy Dalton in Washington. I knew it wasn't going to be Mike White because I told you that's a real competition. They're not looking for a real competition in Washington. Jacoby Brissett's still out there. Teddy Bridgewater, I don't know if he's available this year. He might still be in Miami, but guys like that are still available. There's plenty of these quarterbacks, plenty of them out there. Gardner Minshew is still available. There's plenty of these dudes out there. Trust me. they're going to snag one of them. I'm not worried, and neither should you. I'm not really too concerned with their patience at quarterback because I don't expect that guy to play anyway. In my mind, that dude's not playing regardless. Got a super chat here from Mark Mullinex. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Mark writes, "What's up, bro? TH is gone, man. He went to the Falcons. Man, it sucks. He should have been our backup. Who do you think the backup will be?" I don't know. Gardner Minshew is a guy that is being mentioned as someone to keep an eye on. I've been told by people who are around the building who would know that Minshew is a guy that you might want to keep an eye on. I think you're going to see a few more quarterbacks come off the board. And once the dust settles and the smoke clears, because I don't think they're looking to spend a bunch of money on backup quarterback. Like they did the 1 year, $10 million, $12 million thing with Ryan Fitzpatrick. It didn't work. They did the backup, 2 year, $7 million deal with Taylor Heineke, right? They've done that before. They went out and got Carson Wentz, spent $28 million on him. I just think they're trying to go really low key at quarterback. So it's going to be some real bottom shelf stuff. You're not looking for a top tier backup. It's going to be some middle. It's going to be mid tier to bottom tier, some aristocrat type backup here where you're like, shit, I got a headache the next day. Don't consume too much of that shit. It'll catch up with you. I didn't think Heineke would be back. And we're going to talk about that. I think we may go live tomorrow. If not, definitely Thursday night. We'll talk more about it then. But my money right now is on a guy like Gardner Minshew. But we'll see. I don't even know what's still available. Let's see. I think I still have the list of free agent quarterbacks. And so I think I can look at that real quick. All right. Wentz, Brady, Mariota is still out there, so don't discount him. I think he's going to cost you a little bit more, though. Bridgewater is available, so that's another dude to throw in the mix. Kyle Allen is available. Although, did you see that Washington reached out? Well, okay, it wasn't Washington per se, but a NFL team reached out to Chad Henne, who recently retired from the NFL, was the backup in Kansas City the last 3 years. If you recall, 2 years ago, Mahomes gets hurt in the playoff game against Cleveland. He steps in and helps them win that game. He just retired, and a team contacted him and offered him a deal to come out of retirement. And he said no. Who do you think it was? Come on. Let's be for real. It was Washington. So you see what they're looking at quarterback. They're not trying to get real competition for Sam Howell. All right. So Nick Mullins is gone. Heineke's gone. Mike White is gone. Andy Dalton is gone. Case Keenum is gone. Jimmy Garoppolo is gone. Sam Darnold is gone. Let's see. We got another list of quarterbacks here. You got Drew Lock, Brandon Allen, Josh Johnson, Nate Sudfeld, Nathan Peterman, Jeff Driscoll is interesting. Cooper Rush is still out there. Brett Rippon, Tyler Huntley, John Wofford, Philip Walker, Trace McSorley, Jarrett Stidham is gone. Easton Stick is gone. Got Gardner Minshew and Shane Buechele. Shane Buechele is another name to keep an eye on. Backup quarterback in Kansas City the last couple of years. He knows the system. So that's another name to keep an eye on as well. But he's not a veteran. Okay, he's not a veteran. He's 25, but Gardner Minshew is 26. But we consider him a veteran because he's actually played in the league, whereas Shane Buechele has not. So still a number of guys to choose from. It's still a number of players available. So I wouldn't panic. I wouldn't panic. They'll end up with somebody. Marcus Dixon, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, as a Giants fan, how should I feel about this Waller trade? Injury prone, 30 plus years old, but has a massive upside. I'm kind of indifferent about this, not going to lie. I think you should be ecstatic. The age shouldn't really bother you because the man didn't really play football his first 2-3 years of his NFL career. So it's still a lot of tread on those tires. That's not a normal 30-year-old body we're talking about at the tight end position. Okay. Man made a positional change from wide receiver to tight end. That was a 2 to 3 year transition. He also dealt with the substance abuse. So his career did not start off the way that he intended to. But because of that, a lot of tread left on the tires, more so than you would normally get from a 30-plus-year-old tight end. Tight end is one of those positions that ages pretty well. You could be 35, 36 years old. We see Mercedes Lewis still playing. He's got to be pushing 40. You can hang around for a very long time at tight end. Jason Witten left, came back, and played again for like an additional year or two. When he was pushing 40. You shouldn't be concerned about the age. Injury prone, I don't know about that. There were some years in there where he didn't get really nicked up, put up some monster numbers for the Raiders. Yeah, he was nicked up last year. But even my buddy, who's a Raiders fan, said it was kind of weird because he was healthy, then he wasn't healthy, then he was supposed to be back, then he wasn't back. I think it had something to do with Josh McDaniels last year. They didn't get along. Nobody likes him out there. So you're getting a hell of a football player. He's a problem. I wish you didn't get him. I wish he was with another team, not in the NFC East, because he's a damn good player. So if I were you, I would feel ecstatic for a third-round pick. Now, this is a deep tight end class, but none of them look like Darren Waller. Okay, none of them are 6'6" with the movement skills of a Darren Waller, who's an ex-wide receiver. The closest you're going to get to that is Dalton Kincaid, who will be the first tight end probably taken in this year's draft, if not Michael Mayer. But Darren Waller's a different specimen. And you got one of the best pass-catching tight ends in the league when healthy, and I think he can remain healthy. So I would feel good if I were you, personally, but we'll see what happens. Maybe all of your concerns will be validated. But I don't think that's going to be the case. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy JP writes, Raiders, a.k.a. the Faders, are going to be 3-14 next year. We'll see. My buddy, he's one of these fans that loves to throw this out there. Why not bring back Jarrett Stidham? Because either we found our quarterback or he sucks. And if he sucks, guess what? We'll get Caleb Williams next year. Okay. You and 15 other fan bases feel the same way. Hey, let's just play this guy. If he sucks, we'll get Caleb Williams next year. Only one team's getting Caleb Williams, and it's the worst team. Okay, it's going to be a lot of bad teams in the NFL because there always is 2 or 3 really bad teams every year. The likelihood that the Raiders are that team, I'm not going to sit here and act like they weren't one of the worst teams in football. At one point, remember, the Raiders got as high as the number 2 pick in the draft last year. And we were like 9 weeks into the season before they turned their season around and won like 5 in a row or whatever it was, before they had that ridiculous loss to the Patriots. So I'm not saying that the bottom can't fall out of their season with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback. You damn right. They're one Garoppolo injury or, just Garoppolo being Jimmy Garoppolo away from that whole ship absolutely sinking. But I don't think they're going to be the 3-14 team. I don't think it's going to be them. But we'll see. They're in the mix. If Jimmy Garoppolo is hurt or isn't good, they're in the mix. If Jimmy's solid, they're too talented to be 3-14. See, if we have any more supers. If not, I think I'm going to talk about that trade and get out of here. Video channel, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, if Hollywood Heineke shows up in ATL, he'll be back in the XFL soon. He's got to use his legs as a legitimate weapon. Well, he's not being brought in at Atlanta to start. So he's going to be just fine. Whether he uses his legs or not, he'll be fine. You know what's funny about the Falcons? Who did Heineke play 2 of his better games against the last 2 years? The Atlanta Falcons. Now, the one this year that just passed, it was a wet, nasty day. He had that bad interception before halftime, but he was pretty solid in that game. He wasn't great by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a tough day to throw the football. But the year before, he lit him up. And he beat him twice, each of the last 2 seasons. And that, trust me, that didn't, go unnoticed. You don't think they took that into consideration when they looked for a backup quarterback behind Desmond Ridder? He's going to be fine in Atlanta. I got no worries about him. He'll run when he needs to run. He knows what he needs to do to stay in the league. And running around at his size will get him out of the league faster than standing around in the pocket and trying to throw the football. He's no dummy, right? Can't stay in the league if you can't stay available. So he'll run when he needs to run. I'm happy for him getting an opportunity in Atlanta. Starface, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, I want Gonzalez or JPJ at 16, preferably Gonzalez. My preference is Gonzalez right now as well, but I really think he will be the first corner taken. Not Devon Witherspoon. I think it'll be him. But we'll see. I think of the 3 corners, JPJ has the best chance of being available at 16. So we'll see what happens. Ree, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Greatly appreciate it. I think this is a double up. This might be a triple up, though. I think this might be a triple up, actually. Dean turned down $18 million a year elsewhere. Took 13 to stay. He must like it here. He'll be just fine money-wise. He ain't struggling. Sometimes it's about fit. He knows the scheme. He knows how he's going to be utilized. Todd Bowles is the only defensive coordinator / head coach he's ever known in this league, if I'm not mistaken. So I think there's just a level of comfort there that he doesn't really want to go somewhere else where he may not be used properly. There's no state tax in Florida. It could have been $18 million somewhere else. They got state tax. It's not more than the 13 I'm getting. Like, you have to take that shit into consideration too. Like, 18 million in Washington, in DC, is definitely not the same as $18 million in Florida, right? $13 million in Florida is probably more money than $18 million in, say, New York. So all of that shit you take into consideration, right? So he may have gotten $18 million a year from another team, but Uncle Sam and others might have been digging in his pocket, and by the time he, sort everything out, that's more like 11 or 12 and a half. I'm going to take this 13 in Florida, and I'll be just fine. So, yeah, good for him. Good for him. Ree, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, Jason Light says that Kyle Trask will get an opportunity to win the job. He won't be given anything, but he will get a shot to win it regardless. Okay, I appreciate you blessing us with that. I never thought he was going to get a chance. I always thought when, Brady stuck around for that extra year, I was like, shit, that's probably not good for Kyle Trask. And then when I was hearing Jimmy Garoppolo rumors, I was like, they must really not think too much of Kyle Trask. But being that they weren't as aggressive in this quarterback market, because if you really didn't believe in Kyle Trask, then you needed to be really aggressive. You needed to go get a Mike White. Like at a bare minimum, you needed to come away with a Mike White if you weren't going to go after a Jimmy Garoppolo, if you didn't love or at least like Kyle Trask. But by their actions, by them not doing anything to this point, it tells me that they're going to give, at least an opportunity to Kyle Trask to compete. But we'll see what he's about, man. He's had 3 years now. This will be his 3rd year. If he's worth a damn, we should see something. Kyle Pitts swears by him, right? Let's see if he can get the job done or not in Tampa. There's a lot of talent there. If you can protect him, he could be, effective. We'll see. John Perez, my guy JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy JP writes, keep in mind, Lou, Washington is going to lose Gibby in a year, and I feel like they have soured on him a little bit anyway. They could lose him. They don't have to lose him. He's not going to cost you a lot of money to retain him next year. He's also your kickoff return man. You get rid of him, you don't have a kickoff return man on the roster. So I don't think they soured on him as much as you think. And with Bieniemy coming in, there may be a newfound role for him. There may be newfound, gold for Gibby in this new scheme. So I don't think they're going to spend money on a guy like Austin Eckler. I really don't. But again, I could be wrong. But Gibby is a free agent next year. I'm fully aware. Fully aware. Commanders Nation. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Commanders Nation writes, we better not be done at linebacker or else I'm going to be pissed. What else? He said, what do you think they do? I'm told you, I'm getting uneasy. I don't want to project this off on you guys, though. I don't want to project my insecurities about what they are or aren't going to do at linebacker off on you. I don't want you guys to be worried about that or, getting pissed off, because I already said I'll be pissed if this is it. But I don't want you guys to feel that way because I'm projecting that onto you. But make no mistake about it. When I saw the crop of linebackers that were going to be free agents, I cannot lie. I got excited being that that's what we needed the most outside of offensive line. Defensively, in free agency, what we needed the most was a linebacker, a middle linebacker to be more specific. And there were plenty of them in this year's crop of linebackers that were free agents. And I just figured they'd grab one. I didn't think the one that they'd grab would be Cody Barton, okay? Of all these guys that were available, Cody Barton? Like, they're starting to give me Seattle Seahawks vibes from this standpoint. I've always said that come draft time, the Seahawks always present themselves as the smartest guys in the room. We don't need a first-round pick. We don't need a second-round pick. We'll draft a guy in the 6th or 7th round, and he'll be better than your 2nd or 3rd rounder. Just give me more picks in the 5th, 6th, and 7th, and watch what I do with them. I'm smarter than you, right? Cool. I feel like Rivera and Jack Del Rio think they're smarter than everybody else at linebacker. We'll just get anybody at linebacker. No, Jamin Davis shouldn't be selected in the 1st round. But he's 6'3", 235 pounds, runs a 4.4 40. He's a freak. We can coach him up. He's getting better, but still not a 1st round pick at linebacker, but he's getting better. I don't love them continuing to bring back David Mayo. I don't love them continuing to bring back John Bostic. Dejan, forgot his name. That didn't work. They liked him a little bit. They like Milo Eifler. Obviously, he hasn't turned into anything. I just knew they were going to get the most out of Khaleke Hudson. Haven't, it's been crickets. Haven't gotten anything out of him, and I think they have missed the boat on maximizing his skill set. And now, Cole Holcomb, I thought would really flourish under them, and I thought he was starting to. Then he got injured, and now you're going to tell me no, it's Cody Barton. I really don't love it. I hear his name, and all I can think of, if you a 757er, all I can think of is Bart Ford, Beach Ford, Barton Ford, Lincoln Mercury, world class. That has nothing to do with nothing. But y'all know what I'm talking about. I don't want him to be it at linebacker. And maybe it is for free agency. Maybe they draft a guy, but their track record shows that this is it. They're probably not going to draft anybody worth a damn. If they do, it'll be late round draft pick, guy that we probably shouldn't be looking to be our savior. I think they're done at linebacker. I hope I'm wrong. I really, truly do. But I've been at this long enough to know if they wanted Cole Holcomb back, and again, there's no rush. He's not going anywhere. So they may be focusing in on other areas of their team and just knowing that, Cole's not going nowhere. Kind of taking them for granted. But why take him for granted if you want him back? You wanted Danny Johnson back. You signed him, right? If you truly wanted Cole Holcomb, why not just re-sign him? It leads me to believe that they're not going to. So I wish I had an answer for you, but I don't know if they're doing anything else at linebacker. Not in free agency, at least. I think they do sign one more free agent. Obviously, they're going to sign a quarterback. I'm talking about non-quarterback. I do think they sign one more non-quarterback free agent. Not quite sure if they're done on the offensive line. I could see them, signing a safety. I could see them, signing another place kicker, something of that, ilk. I don't really think they're going to do anything, needle moving. The last big domino probably for us is the backup quarterback. But we'll see. We'll see what they decide to do. Swaggy P, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Swaggy P, writes, "What up, Lou? Hope all is well. I don't know if you watch the XFL, but if you do, are there any guys you would like to see the Commanders take a chance on? I see a couple of DC defenders I wouldn't mind checking out. Hashtag HTTC. We had a conversation about this on the last Washington stream where I said I don't watch the XFL. I haven't watched it yet. I'm pretty sure I will. Go over to my parents' house. There's nothing else on. There's nothing for me to do. And TV's on, and it's XFL and NBA basketball. I hate when I do that. NBA and XFL, and the NBA game is on commercial. My dad's going to turn it to the XFL game. He's not going to just leave it there on the commercial break. Me, I get up, I do something on the commercial. I'm on my phone on the commercial. Like, I'm not tripping. My dad he can't sit there through a commercial break. He's got to find something to watch. So eventually I'm going to end up watching the XFL, but I haven't. So I can't tell you about any of the players there, but there'll be a few players, there always is, that end up getting a look-see from the NFL after a stint in, one of these other leagues. So if I'm not mistaken, Kevontae Turpin, the return man for Dallas, who I think was a Pro Bowler this year, came from the XFL or the USFL last year. I think it was the USFL last year because I think the XFL was defunct last year. So I think you're going to get 2 or 3 guys that end up making their way to the league from there. I just couldn't tell you who they are right now. All right. So that is going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. I thank you guys for joining me. Let's see. Got a comment here from William Rogers Jr. Been a member for 8 months. Shout out to my guy, William Rogers Jr., for being a Mob Squad member for 8 months. Right. Can you explain why former linebackers are so bad at picking them? I wish I had an answer for you. Probably because of their ego. They look at a guy's traits, and instead of looking at what the player does on the field, they look at his traits and they say, here's what we should be able to extract out of him. We can turn him into a good football player, you know, because we know what it takes to be a really good linebacker. Instead of just saying, like they do with most positions, just look at the player, grade them on their performance, and then figure out if they fit in their scheme or not and decide if that's a good fit. At linebacker, they seem to just say, to hell with the, like they've actually done this quite a bit though, not just at linebacker. They've done it with corners too, you know, here in Washington. Did it with Josh Norman, where they pretty much said, to hell with what he's been doing in Carolina, which made him successful. We're going to bring him here and we're going to make him a press, you know, man-to-man cover corner. That's not what he was in Carolina. And don't let Josh talk you into thinking that's what he is, because that's not what he is. It's cover 3 corner. And Ron even looked us dead in the eyes and said, yeah, I used him wrong. But he turned around and did the same thing with William Jackson III. They figured, oh, he can play man. He should be able to play zone. And he got here and William Jackson III act like he never seen zone coverage before. So, yeah, they've had an issue with some of that stuff where they just figure, hey, he's an athlete. He'll figure it out. That shit don't work all the damn time. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on another installment of the LouieTeeNetwork podcast. I thank you guys for joining me on this late night Louie edition. We're going to be talking about free agency. Tomorrow is the start of the new league year. I think it starts officially at 4:00, but I'm going to tell you in advance because it's already Wednesday. Happy New Year! That's me blowing a little party horn thing. Yeah. Confetti in the air. Yay! New Year. Woo! Everything becomes official tomorrow. All the trades, all the signings, all of those things start to take place tomorrow. So I think we'll hear more deals and more things transpiring tomorrow. So as always, keep your ears to the street, eyes wide open, because things are still happening. And if anything significant happens, like the Cardinals trade the number 3 overall pick, or a big time trade happens, or a big signing happens, especially if it's Washington Commanders related. But even if it's not, if something big enough happens, I'll jump on live and we'll discuss. But in any event, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Until next time, you guys have a good one. Take care. As always, God bless and good night.